Welcome, y'all. It's Wes with DIY Food Plot Pro. Thank you so much for joining us. One question that I have got asked so many times over the years pertaining to these no-till drills is, Wes, can I plant corn with a no-till drill? I don't know how many times I've been asked that, and I've always answered it the same way. I believe I could, but I've never tried it. Well, now I have, and I'm going to share with you my full experience with drilling corn with a no-till drill, and I'm going to show some of the pros and the cons of that, and I'm going to share with you some insights that I think would be very, very beneficial to anybody who may or may not want to do this in the future. My name is Wes. I run the channel DIY Food Plot Pro. I've got a Bachelor of Science in Agronomy. I farm for a living. I got an 1,800 acre whitetail deer hunting outfitter in Western Kentucky where we cannot bait. So we rely heavily on these food plots that I plant on the channel to hold and harvest the mature bucks that we are blessed to hunt here in Western Kentucky. So I rented this drill from my local soil conservation district, and I went out with the intention of planting a mix of food plots that I intend to sell next year. I planted multiple different hybrids, multiple different mixes on the property where we can really key in on what we like, what the whitetails like, what's going to be best for holding large amounts of deer in the summer and the fall and through the entire winter. And one of the big things that I wanted to do with this drill was to plant corn with it, because I've always used my corn planter to plant my corn, and I've always had very good luck doing that, and I really probably shouldn't change, but many folks have a grain drill and they don't have a planter. The first thing about a drill that is different than a planter is this is not a precision unit. This is something that is a controlled spill. This just essentially just is a controlled spill as far as how much seed falls out of the planter down the tubes, whether it's small seed or big, falls down the tubes and goes down into the hole where it's planting. Very, very difficult to get even spacing like corn really prefers. That's number one. Here's the main issue with this. There is not a setting on this drill that says corn, because typically corn is not used with no-till drills. It's typically a planter. So there is nothing to go off of, no settings on this entire planter that says, okay, set it on slot 9 or slot 10. I had to kind of guess through this whole entire process. The way I did that is I measured a piece of ground out to be an acre, and I knew the amount of seeds that I wanted per acre. So I had those weighed out and measured and ready, and then I would start planting. The first plot, I literally made it 2 times around a 1 acre field and I was out of seed, right? Whoa, way too much open. So what did I do? I shut it down about halfway. Then I started making passes and I got back there and digging. There was no seed coming out. Very frustrating day trying to get this calibrated, trying to get this planting at the correct depth, correct spacing. Very, very, very frustrating, and I feel very confident in my ability to farm, right? I've done this my whole life. I have worked with machineries and tractor and drills and planters my whole life. I feel like I have a very good understanding of that, and this was very, very, very much a struggle for me that day. I was very frustrated, tired, and hot. We're ready to be done. Anyway, I started off at 10.5 on the setting, planting it way too thick. So I bumped it down to 4.5. Didn't get any seed coming out. Why are we not getting seed coming out of 4.5? Well, it's because of these little plates back in there. The way this is, it's kind of a square, and as you open the grain drill more or less, it shuts or closes this. So what was happening when I had it at 4.5, the bigger seeds, which was the corn and the sunflowers, had that hole completely blocked. So after some tinkering in a couple different zones, I finally got her dialed in on about 8.5. That was where I felt pretty confident. Anywhere from 8.5 to 8.75, I was getting a pretty good job done as far as the population goes. Here's another wrench that gets thrown in to a drill. It's a square box up there that the seeds fall out of into these tubes. If you have varying seed sizes, this is going to be impossible. So when I say it's set at 8.5, that was for large seeds. I had large corn seed that I was planting in here with it. PDFs. Any old farmer will tell you, what's PDF mean? Pretty darn flat. And PDRs are pretty darn round. So a flat is in kind of the middle of the ear. It's a real flat kernel, long and deep. PDRs, or the rounds, are on kind of the outsides of the ears. So they're going to be more rounded and be a little bit smaller, but they're going to have a round shape to them. So if you were using PDFs, which is the flat, larger ones, versus the PDRs, you will have a significant difference in this. You will not be able to set this at 8.5 and roll on with it if you're using the small round seeds versus what I was using was the large flat seeds, okay? You're gonna have too much. So this is very much every time you go out there, you have to set this drill for the seed that you have. So extremely difficult. Lots of math required here, lots of time and energy. And here's the thing, if you had one acre plot, I think it would be extremely difficult because by the time you figured this drill out, you'd be done with it. Where I had another 7 or 8 acres to plant after I got it calibrated and figured out. So I basically just wasted 1 or 2 plots, but I still had a lot of plots to do. So for the everyday landowner who just might have 1 or 2 plots, if you've got big seed, I would start at 8.5 with this drill. If you have smaller seeds, I would go down to probably a 7 and try that. But that is just gonna be, that's a wild guess is all that is, depending on how big your seed is and exactly what kind of drill you got. So when we're talking about corn, corn is a very precise crop. It's not like soybeans and sunflowers, cereal grains, clovers. They don't matter as much on precision where corn does. Corn really needs to be down 1.5 inches consecutively. And you really don't need some corn at 1/2 inch and some at 2 inches, because what happens is the big corn that comes up faster is gonna shade the little one out, and this one's gonna kind of act as a sucker for the entire year on the bigger plant. So ideally, you want all your corn coming up at the exact same time. Very difficult to get a perfect 1.5 inch depth on this as you would a planter. Planter's much easier to get that consistent depth and to get that seed spread out, because we know if we have 3 corn seeds right on top of each other, they're not going to yield well. Where a soybean, we could plant 3 plants there and they are going to yield basically the same whether those 3 are spread out over a foot or if they're right on top of each other. Soybeans not nearly as important a population as corn is. If we put 3 kernels of corn right next to one another, more than likely those corn plants are not going to do well at all. So we really need to be precise in our planting. Now, with all that being said, I just got through planting this 3 days ago, so I don't have any corn up yet from this trial. I feel pretty confident about it that I will have. I think it will work out just fine, except for those first 2 plots. Those were a freaking disaster. But the other ones, I think they are going to work out just fine. The population worked out pretty good. Time will tell on that, but I do think it's possible to plant corn with a no-till drill. It just takes a lot of time and a lot of preparation, and it's something that you really need to be aware of on these openings, on how much seed is falling out of those openings. It very much is the difference between being a failed crop and having a successful crop if you put too much. If you plant 60,000 corn seeds per acre, the corn's gonna be terrible. That's too many plants per acre for corn. It needs to be 24 to 32,000. So it's very critical to get in that 24 to 32,000 number rather than being way too high on this. And with this machine, it is very easy to plant too much. It's very easy. So that's something to really watch out for if you try to use this to plant corn. I think you can do it successfully. Just like I said, very difficult, very time consuming, very aggravating. And I would plan on taking a lot of time out there to try to calibrate that drill. Maybe do a very small area, break your seed down into a very small area, and calculate it that way to get your drill ready to go for that 1 acre plot. Because I think if you just had one acre plot and you try to take this thing to calibrate it, I think you're going to make a terrible mess on your farm unless you have that drill completely set and ready to go to the field. If you need help setting up your farm or your food plots, you can go to my website, www.diyfoodplotpro.com. I've got all kinds of new products that are going to be hitting the website very soon. And I hope you will continue to support the channel. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Y'all smash that like and subscribe button.